So we are born with 128 billion neurons. That's about as many stars as there are in the Milky Way. And it doesn't stop there because every second, 1 million new neural connections are formed. I mean, these are massive numbers.
Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, Professor of Education.
And I'm Amy Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based, practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start.
We are so excited today to have Dr. Harding with us as our guest. She's speaking all the way from London, and so this is especially interesting. Let me tell you a little bit about her. As an international child development and education expert, Dr. Jacqueline Harding is recognized for her work advising the UK government, practitioners, and parents. She is an honorary visiting research fellow at Middlesex University. Jacqueline is the chair of the Bright Start Foundation. She also represented the UK in developing essential digital criteria and establishing best practice for broadcasters, parents, and teachers across Europe. Jacqueline was privileged to pioneer and manage the Parent Channel TV platform for the UK government, a groundbreaking film-based resource for parents and practitioners. She continues to work on children's TV shows such as Peter Rabbit, Teletubbies, Clangers, and Bing and Betty Buys, and is a contributor to CBeebies Parenting. She is a frequent speaker in the media and a former BBC education editor, government consultant, and head teacher. Jacqueline is the author of the best-selling book, The Brain That Loves to Play. You definitely want to grab that, and has 4 more books about to be published. The Brain That Loves to Laugh and Little Brains Love to Talk, which are accompanied by 2 children's books. As you can tell, she is very busy. Let's begin and hear more.
Well, what can I say? It's just fantastic to be here with you and plant the seed of learning. Don't we want to do that? And it's just amazing to be here with Crystal and Amy, who I know that is your aim. And so thank you so much for inviting me. Let's dive right in.
Yes,
Okay.
we are so pleased to have you. We had the pleasure of meeting you last year at the Bright Start Conference in London. So we're so excited to have you join us. Morning for us, afternoon for you, but let's dive right in. I am so excited to talk about your book. We absolutely love this book, The Brain That Loves to Play. Just can you start by sharing why you decided to write this book?
Do you know, that's such a good question. And halfway through writing it, I wondered myself. As we all do, don't we? We get
Oh,
halfway through
yeah.
a book and think, why did I do it?
Oh, yeah, we get
Um,
that.
you,
Mhm.
you just do, don't you?
Yes.
But right at the beginning, I had this amazing passion for wanting to share the knowledge and skills and the privilege I think I've had of spending time with practitioners and researchers around the world. And I just wanted to share that information in a way that doesn't threaten people. So I thought, what's the best way of doing that? Through pictures, through little films of children, not whole broadcast quality films. I mean, fly on the wall type films that would illustrate the points that I wanted to make.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've never found a parent or practitioner say, oh, please don't tell me about brain development. I don't want to hear. They just don't say that.
Right.
Yeah, what they want is give me the information, give me the research, but don't give me all the long words. So I try to strip out some of those long words or at least explain them. And the thing is, I don't believe that parents are thick. I really do think they want to know and can know.
Of course.
It's our responsibility to communicate it in a way that everyone can understand. And if you could see my desk right now, I've got lots of little toys and playthings here because it's the way I understand, and that's the way I want to communicate. So, yeah, the brain that loves to play, I think represents, I think you're getting a little glimpse into my brain as well, because I like to play, I like to be creative, and I know that that's the way children's brains operate. So I
Mhm.
was on to a win, really, I think.
That's
Wonderful.
amazing. We have so many commonalities, and Amy and I recognized this right away in speaking with you at the conference last year. But your book really nails the connections necessary to attract families and caregivers because we need to make it simple for them because sometimes we use a lot of education jargon and that turns them away. But I love what you're doing in your book and especially how you break down play by age and then you discuss how it affects the neural circuitry of the brain. Can you talk about what is happening in the structure of the brain when children play?
Delighted. Okay, here comes my brain that likes to light up. And when children play, it's as though the whole brain can light up. So all of those different areas that we all talk about, they can all light up. So we are born with 128 billion neurons. That's about as many stars as there are in the Milky Way. And it doesn't stop there because every second, 1 million new neural connections are formed. I mean, these are massive numbers, and it gives us a little bit of a hint as to how important those first 5 to 7 years might be. And when you talk about what's going on in the brain right from birth, it was about a few months ago, I was sitting down, I was about to listen to television. I thought, you know what, my hearing isn't very good at the moment. I must have wax in my ears. And so I went and got my boom bar. And when I switched it on, it said in pairing mode, waiting for connection. And I thought, whoa, this is how the human brain is. It's underdeveloped. It's a crazy design when you think about it. When you think of other mammals, they're ready and ripe and off and into the universe and able to feed themselves. But no, not a human brain, but it's in pairing mode, waiting for connection. And that's exactly what it needs. And when we talk about the senses, right from that sensory motor period, which just means how we learn through the senses, through our sight, through hearing, through touch, through smell, through how we sense the world around us. In that sense, little babies and little children's brains are like sponges. And when we talk about, let's chuck one big word in, shall we? Neuroplasticity. Let's get it over and done with. Neuroplasticity, which means how our brains can change. Do you know what? We used to think, and it wasn't that long ago, that by the time a child had got to 7 years of age, it was all done and dusted. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the brain isn't important and the way that it develops in those first 7 years are important, but we now know that neuroplasticity allows your brain and my brain to change and adapt. Ah, so you mean that we can learn? Yes. Does it mean that we can learn to be more playful? Yes. Does it mean that there's hope for us in our older ages to be just as vital to younger generations? Absolutely, it does. And the thing is that with our little neurons, so that 128 billion neurons that just love connecting like this, are no good when they're on their own. What they need is to be joined up. And you can imagine what I'm going to say. What's the best way to build a brain? It is
Play.
through play. It's absolutely through play because play does the heavy lifting when it comes to cognitive development. And cognitive development is how we make sense of the world. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that we have to sit down and recite the alphabet or learn how to count. It means how to think, how to problem solve, how to be curious, how to wonder. And if we can bottle that, and if we can focus that on that, then we are truly building a brain all the way through the early years and beyond. I've got lots of other toys, but you might want to ask me questions. Otherwise, I shall be through the whole of my toy box in no time.
Oh my gosh, that is a fabulous analogy, waiting to connect. And we've all experienced that. Every time I take my AirPods out and want to go for a walk and listen to music or a podcast, that's a couple seconds of waiting to connect. And it just makes me think of a baby looking up at mom or dad's face, like engage with me, that waiting to connect. That is a brilliant analogy. I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
So
and the thing is, and here we have some wrapping paper from Christmas, that if this is the baby's brain and this is an adult's brain, what we really love to do, or the child's brain, is
it
become
meshed together. Yeah.
synchronous
Yes.
and connect.
Yes.
And one of the most fabulous pieces of work I was ever privileged to do was to look at, I was researching, it's so funny actually, because it had never occurred to me before. I was asked to research how play might actually impact adults,
Mhm.
when they play with their children, because we always talk about the benefits of play for children, don't we? But what about what it might do for the adults? And what I found was the the almost magical way that brains can get in sync, and it's called biobehavioral synchrony. Let's have another word. And all that means is being able to get on the same page. And I can see by looking at your faces, we are so on the same pages. Our brains are really very happy to engage and to be on the same page. And when that comes to connection, that can happen through eye contact,
Mhm.
and it can happen through close proximity and shared attention. So I developed this triangle. Because I'm a simple person, obviously you can tell with all my toys that simplicity is my middle name. I could see it as a triangle, that close connection, even though you and I, as we're talking now, aren't geographically in the same place, we are still feeling that sense of connection and shared attention and shared enjoyment of a subject that we're talking about. And your listeners and viewers will be able to connect with us connecting.
Yeah.
How exciting is that?
Mm.
And that's what a human brain is built to do. And that's its prime concern.
And that's such an important concept. I don't think we talk enough about matrescence, that there is a phase of development when we go through when we have a child. And it's not just a shift in the identity, but it's actually biological changes in the brain circuitry.
Yeah.
So that's a brilliant point. I love that. So let's stay on neurology for a second. Can you talk specifically about how play affects the brain in ways that strictly academic learning or adult-directed tasks do not?
Yeah. Well, let me there's one phrase in the brain that loves to play that I just chucked in there, and I thought nobody would take any notice of it, but they did, which is that play and learning are inextricably linked.
Mm.
There is really no way that they should ever be pulled apart from each other. And if you start with that premise, it kind of shifts everyone's thinking
Mm.
into exactly how things should progress.
Mhm.
And I've forgotten your question now. What was your question? I was so into this. What was your question now? What was it?
Dr. Harding, if so listeners, if you happen to be listening to our podcast, Dr. Harding has some wonderful little props that are illustrating her points, that are beautiful illustrations that really helps us understand what you're talking about. But she just tied two pieces of string together to demonstrate that linking of the two, play and learning together. So I was just saying, how does the brain change during play that we might not see that same neurological change when it's adult directed tasks or more
Yeah.
traditional learning that does not involve play? A child doing a worksheet, for example.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. Good question. I'm back on track.
Okay.
So what is it that play does that adult directed, tell them what to do, sit there, don't do anything else. I get you. Okay. Right. So if I told you that there was a study that showed, and it wasn't just mine, that was NASA,
Mhm.
that 98% of 4-year-olds are creative geniuses. You know this one,
I
but
love
let's
this study.
let's talk about this one because this one nails it in the only way possible, really. Anyway, so what happened was NASA was really keen to get the best brains in the world to come work for them. And so George Land was asked to devise some tests. It worked so well that they said, "Oh, come on, let's devise something for children because we nailed this at a young age, and then we'll be able to cultivate it." So he did, and he found. So these tests were to show whether how because he knew a thing or two about intelligence, and of course, intelligence really comes and creative thought from creative thought. Anyway, so it turns out that 98% of children of 4 years of age are creative geniuses. Now, thought, okay, we're on a roll here. By I think it was about 10 years of age, it had gone down to about 35%, by 15 further down. By the time they were adults, 2%. Why? So we have to say, okay, let's have a sniff around what's going on in the education system. So, particularly, well, let's just talk about the US. I don't feel I can talk about the US, but let's just demonize the UK education system. So, the education system was devised for an industrialized society where you needed people, do as you're told, go right, go left, don't ask questions, don't be curious, do as you are told in order to be productive. Maybe that was a good thing. Who am I to judge? For that time, okay. But when that ceased to be profitable and useful, education didn't stop in the way that it was designed back in the day. And I mean, even to the extent that some weird things have never really shifted, like the time that we go to school.
Yeah.
It's just so odd, and the chairs, and it's very difficult to shift
Uh-huh.
big organizations to turn the ship from one way to another. And of course, when you aren't allowing children to be creative and playful, then gradually the whole brain does the opposite of what we would love it to do, to be playful. It's certainly not going to do that. It's in much more of a dampened down view. So all of that wonderful lighting up the parts of the brain that go like, yeah, I've got a great idea. I'm going to connect with this idea, and then they do all of that wonderful connection. Because remember, neurons are no good on their own, they've got to connect. Neurons that fire together wire together, we all know about that.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's pruned and it's off. So,
Yep.
if we want a brain to grow, there is only really one solid way of doing that, and that's through this wonderment of awe and surprise and that glittering glow that you see on children's faces of, I want to learn And that, if it's squashed down, then squashes, if you like, the brain. I know I'm exaggerating.
No, we love what you're saying, and especially the connection to the factory model of education. I talk with my graduate students about this a lot and how we feel like the factory model still exists today, and we're losing the creativity, and the same problems in education continue to recycle themselves. And why is that? Because we're not doing enough play in the classroom setting. There's not enough time for kids to use their imagination and to be creative. And you have certainly nailed that in your comments. You do talk a lot about imagination and how it can influence biology and even gene expression. So,
Mhm.
if you were to tell parents or explain this reasoning to parents and why imagination is so, so important
Yeah, I mean
for
that's
them.
that's so important. I mean, I think the simplest way that I can explain it is that there is no sharp division between, and bear with me here, kind of reality and imagination. And that's because the brain will assume through prediction, because the brain is a predicting machine, that what you tell it is true.
Mm.
Now, bear with me because this does take a little while to explain, but genes are not, and here are my genes, and this is more of my Christmas decorations. Genes are not actually set in stone. And by through playful expression and happiness and dumbing down the stress response, getting that stress response under control allows us to inhabit a more imaginative, creative space. Now, it doesn't mean that the genes are literally turned on or off. But one of the ways that I do this, and I'm now showing for those of you who are only listening to this crazy woman speaking, I'm actually showing a toy with a light inside of it. But imagination, in a crude way, actually turns genes on or off inside the nerve cells through repetitive action and through neuroplasticity and through the environment and through the senses, blah, blah, so that it has a cascading effect all the way through the biology. We used to think, quite simply, that the brain and body, nothing to do with each other. I mean, how mad is that? I mean, were we sort of just, the head walking around on its own? Well, we kind of did think that, really. But the way that children are able to imagine really needs to be prized, not only because of its ability to impact gene expression, but also through what it can do for our cognitive development, and in particular, language development. Let me just explain that. If I were to, if I went and got this broom that's in the corner, and I was running around on the broom, you might say, yeah, she's totally gone crazy now. She obviously does think that broom is a horse, but actually, I'm able to think of that broom as a horse, which is symbolic thinking. And it is that symbolism, being one thing stands for another, that's incredibly difficult for us to even begin to grasp. But it's the beginning of language. When I say car to you, Crystal and Amy, you don't have to go, oh, hang on a moment, in order to understand that, I better go and get my car from outside and bring it in. Oh, yeah, that's a car. You conjured up a picture of a car in your mind. So imagination is underrated for its powerful effect on our language and our ability to enjoy life. Let's say it. Play doesn't have to be useful all the time, but it's great fun being imaginative and it triggers a biochemical um, response in our bodies. Anyway, it's good for us. It's
Right.
good for
We
us.
all want that dopamine release that we get
Yeah.
from the play. It's so important. And I love your connection to language because if we're not building language, we're not preparing our young readers. Learning vocabulary is how we learn early literacy and then writing. We need that vocabulary to become writers.
Absolutely. And of course, when children are playing imaginatively, they'll experiment with words. And some of your listeners may have 2 and 3 year olds. And I think this is one of the most delicious things that little ones do when they go to bed, they're all snuggling down and they say things like, oh, cobwebs. Cobwebs, 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 and they'll repeat words and they'll enjoy the sound and the feel of it in their mouths. And how wonderful is that? That they're rehearsing something that they've perhaps seen during the day and they're trying it on their lips as they go to sleep. Great time to practice language before you go to sleep.
I
I
can
love
remember my
that.
daughters doing that, saying words
Yes,
and phrases over and over, different intonations, and yeah, just processing, learning. Yes. So we talked about creativity, we've talked about imagination and how they both tie into learning. So with that in mind, what would the ideal classroom look like, Dr. Harding? What would you envision that would
oh,
spark all of that good stuff?
oh, well, I think we should make children sit in rows, face the front, don't talk, don't move. Of course not. What
Love
we need to do
that.
is the opposite to all of that. And we need classrooms to be sympathetic to what we know about brains. And if young brains get stressed, then we have the whole body goes into a sort of sympathetic
Mhm.
mode where the stress really makes it very, very difficult to learn. And what we need then is the parasympathetic nervous system to come on board. And the parasympathetic nervous system I always see as kind of like, oh, that's a bit like a nice rug like this. I'm putting a rug around myself and hugging myself. And that can be done by an adult as well. And by their disposition and by offering their calm. For a lot of children in classrooms today are highly stressed for a lot of reasons, which we'll talk about perhaps in a minute around screens. And so they're in that situation, the last thing they need is to be stressed. So the opposite of that, to feel safe and secure, is the very first thing the young brain needs. Now, do our classrooms always do that? We have to challenge ourselves sometimes and say, are we making them feel safe? Are we applying the Goldilocks principle? What we offer them through play, if we're going to follow a curriculum, and I know that probably in the US as much as in the UK, there is a curriculum and we all have to stick to it, then how much of that can be handed over to the child? How much autonomy can they have? A lot more than we think, a lot more.
Mhm.
And we're seeing over here play taking over for 5 and 6 and 7 year olds and 8 year olds and 9 year olds in the classroom. And in my new book called The Brain That Loves to Play, I show little snippets of children who are now playing at 9 years of age in the classroom. So it's possible. And guess what? They're not all running out the classroom, running out trying to get out the windows, out of control, which is the fear of a lot of teachers, is they're going to lose control. So in my mind, the classroom would take heed of the brain and body's budget, because the brain is a predicting organ. It's using a lot of its nutrition and calories just to function. And the brain is saying to itself, I wonder how much I can afford to build this or put into writing at the moment. Well, actually, I think my body really needs to run around. And the brain is making those choices according to what the body really needs. Now, we can expend all of those resources in making children sit still. And when they're having to sit still, that takes a lot of, ironically, a lot of energy in order to sit still and listen and do things that they are not really, that are not age appropriate. So my classroom would be one full of play, not out of control, because people make that the synonymous. It isn't out of control. And the classrooms I've been in recently, where they are, um, they're really as their peg for knowledge, the way that they're going to teach their pedagogy is through play. These are calm classrooms. They're calm. How amazing is that?
Mhm.
It is so, so important.
We see it all the time.
Exactly.
Crystal and
Purposeful
I,
play
yes.
is so necessary, and play is a method for engaging learners, and it's what they most love, and they can tackle those academic class content areas through play, which is amazing. I'm loving this. I love that we talked about imagination, creativity. We've talked about purposeful play now, and I'm picturing you riding a broom, which I love. Play-oriented ambitions for adults, which I think I'm still living that. I can't help it. Um, I want to kind of move into the digital world now. And I know you've represented the UK in developing digital criteria and best practices for broadcasters, parents, and teachers across Europe. What are some of the key recommendations that came out of that?
Well, and this was 10 years ago. And would you believe it? Much the same as we've just been looking at over the last couple of months. In the UK, the government have just brought out advice for parents for screen time because we've got 98% of 2-year-olds are glued to screens and we've got them going to sleep to screens. So there certainly is a challenge out there. Um, so the kind of advice that we were looking at, and my part was to really make sure that it was in alignment with child development principles. So you can imagine what I was thinking about. I was thinking, how's the brain going to cope? And we were putting in guidance around visual and oral cues, pacing, all the sorts of things that you're hearing about now,
Mhm.
um, and for brains to be able to predict content. So it has to be around comprehension driven content, because if you keep throwing content onto a screen,
Yep.
you might have a child doing this. And at this moment, just for your listeners, my mouth is wide open and I'm just staring at a screen
Yes.
and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. I
Yes.
am mesmerized and I may be quiet and
Yep.
my whole body may be paying attention, but the cost of that,
Uh-huh.
the body budget that I talked about, it's as though the body is taking up energy that it's unable to use because it's on high alert. And it comes back to days, years, and prehistoric times when we had real threat. And so we had to be on high alert. And I mean, where's the tiger? Yeah, be ready to run any moment. And when you have a lot of cues and clues coming up and fast changing movement on the screen, it puts the body and the brain in that high alert,
Mhm.
frenzied
Yeah.
state. And yet it's going nowhere. And
Yes.
so at the end of that, once it's all over and the screen shut down, then they become ratty, they're all over the place, very difficult to manage, and they can't manage themselves. So
Yep.
it's like a volcano is erupts after it, because it's not comprehension driven and it's not at the pace that the young child needs. And so when and I remember we put in guidelines around commercially, no commercial content, blah blah, all the sort of things you'd expect. I mean, I'd like to think, well, I hope that those that were working with me and that we were able to do some good, but obviously not that much because we're now in a state where we're having to revisit all of this
Yeah.
and again revisiting what is it that is wrong with screens, what's good, what can we make better,
Mhm.
what can we do better,
Mhm.
and how can we make it something. I'm not talking about making it boring. I mean, children are entitled to fun and enjoyment and play and entertainment just as much as we are.
Mhm.
But how do we do that in a safe way that isn't going to stress young brains
Yeah.
and cause them incredible stress? Because, and I'm just showing you now, this is my piece of string here, and this is how young brains tend to be kind of messy brains. And young brains need repetition and safety
Mhm.
in order to bring coherence. And that's why little ones love to hear stories being told time and time again because they want their very messy brains to unravel and to feel safe. And that comes through predictable
Mhm.
content. Now, the trouble is, a lot of that content is unpredictable. And that may be great for our adult brains because we're going, yeah, loving this.
Mhm.
But the trouble is, when we show adults programs that are slow paced for children, like Teletubbies, and I was privileged to work on the new Teletubbies, it's
Yeah.
quite aversive to adults. They're thinking, well, that's so flippin' boring. Why would we? That's no good. But actually, it's what the young brain wants. And that again, is deeply reassuring. And it's saying to the child, I know about this. Look at me. I remember this. And then they hear it again. They go, yeah, check me out. I remember this. And so that lovely repetition is juicy for the brain. So those kind of guidelines, we're seeing them all coming back again with more because there's more choice. Yeah.
And that is so important. And I'm so glad you talked about those quick cuts that we're seeing in a lot of children's programming, especially AI generated programming, where it essentially goes nowhere and leaves that brain in that confused state. And just last week we had Ryan Radusky on our show and we discussed Mr. Rogers and how there's literally an episode where he sits and watches paint dry and it's silent and it's still and it is really engaging for children still. So I so appreciate you talking about that. And I know you've worked on Teletubbies and Peter Rabbit and Bing and all shows that take that different approach of a slower, more still, way of telling the story that is so much more beneficial for that developing brain. So thank you for that. I just want to skip ahead a little bit and ask you your thoughts on, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends no screen time for children under 2. Obviously, we know that they're getting it. And also, what should parents think about screen time? How should we think differently if we really understand brain development more deeply? Like what would you say about that?
Um, well, you're absolutely right. We have to kind of take the wider perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm always on the side of parents, and I know you are as well. Life is busy like it has never been before. And when you've got under twos and you're just coming home from work, and you've got to put the dinner on, and you know you haven't finished your deadline,
Mhm.
you can just absolutely imagine how that must feel. And so to put on the screen and know that for a few minutes, or at least 20 minutes or whatever, the child is not going to be under your feet as you're doing that. Must be huge temptation to do it, but there's always a payback. And that's the problem, that, as I was saying, if they're watching fast-paced content, and stuff that they don't understand and that is really beyond their understanding, and they've got all this pent-up stress within their bodies, and it isn't the Goldilocks principle, not too easy, not too hard, but just right in terms of attention,
Mhm.
then there's the payback where it all comes back in your face. So, what should parents do? I think parents, as I said right at the beginning, really love to understand about brains. And if you're listening to this podcast that we're chatting around now, you can easily make up your mind about the type of content that's going to be beneficial. Take a look, see the world through your child's eyes. Is that going to really help them be calm? Is it going to do that? Now, some shows claim to be educational, and it's kind of like slapping that on. It's going to teach your child colours and all the rest of it. I'm very wary of that personally, because you can still have very fast content that is incomprehensible, way beyond their understanding, and the child comes out sort of like buzzing and yet unable to settle, get back to their set point.
Right.
Don't fall for the whole it's educational thing. What I'd suggest is taking a look at um, one show, and yes, it is over there now, called Beddy Buys. And honestly, I am in love with this show. I put my hand up to it, I've worked on it, I've researched it. I'm in love with that show because it's as though it does everything I want to say. And I'd love to take the credit for it. I'm not the creator. I'm the person that is behind the scenes going, well, you need to think about this for child development, or you need to just be careful with that language or safety issues, or that's my job. So I can't take credit for creating it, but it's a beautiful show that is the pacing is just right. It takes the child through the day all the way to the hour before bedtime. And so if you're having a dreadful time trying to get your child to sleep, it's also a really good model for us parents around how we can calm down. And do you remember I was saying how our brains synchronize? Parents are telling me and writing to me saying, "Do you know, I'm feeling an awful lot better after watching Betty Buys. I'm feeling better." And some people are saying they're watching it before their hour before bedtime. So there is content out there. Of course, little ones do not need screen time. I'm just going to get another toy. Bear with me if I
Okay.
can,
Sure.
without
No problem.
without breaking it, but I must show you this one, which I hope you can see.
Uh-huh.
Um, and this is all, what do young brains really need? And they need super connection. And my question to you is, as a parent watching your child watch television, are they going to get that type of deep connection where I hope that you can see those little electrical
It's
signals
hard to see
coming
them,
out?
but I
It's
know
hard to
that is
see.
what
Oh
it's
well,
supposed to be
I'm
doing.
I'm
Yeah, I
trying
can
to be
visualize it.
yeah, I'm trying to be all scientific here, showing my little toy that
No, that's
shows,
beautiful.
demonstrates that
Yeah.
synchrony, that closeness. Now, if you're going to watch telly with young children, then for goodness sake, watch it with them. That shared viewing can
Mhm.
make all the difference. And you know when a television, I'll give you one of the secrets. And I'm going into a school, lots of schools tomorrow actually, to research a new television show, which is confidential, so I can't tell you. But I'll tell you what I'm going to be looking for, and this is a show for 4-year-olds. I'm going to be looking to see whether they reference the adults in the room or others. Is it going to provoke social and emotional connection.
Mhm.
Because if it doesn't do that, then in my mind, it's not doing a great job. So do under twos need screen time? No, they don't. They don't. And the trouble is, the 99% of TV shows made for under twos are not made for under twos. They're made for older children.
Yeah. I think about when you were talking to us about the messy brain and how it was all befuddled and how the repetitive reading, kids love to hear the same text
Yeah.
over and over again. And I feel sometimes that parents are compelled to put children in front of screens at bedtime because they think that's the best thing for them
Yeah.
because of what we're seeing in the media right now. And now we have the AI toys coming, and parents are thinking, oh, this AI toy is perfect for that social engagement. I can put the AI toy with my child can have a conversation with them, and their parents are always thinking about their children and what's best for their children. But sometimes we misinterpret things. I mean, I definitely did as a parent, and I was even an educator. So if you have any recommendations for parents and we're running out of time, so it'll have to be quick. When it comes to AI toys, or if you have any tips for parents that you would suggest that they try tomorrow, can you
Around AI toys,
provide
well,
advice?
be aware, be alert, because that there's constant surveillance or possible constant surveillance. It's about data protection.
Mhm.
Be aware, and be very careful because there aren't enough rules and regulations in that industry at the moment. Um, I would always err on the caution, the side of caution, be very, very careful. The other probably point that's perhaps more challenging is that children can misunderstand the relationship between an AI toy with them. And children, as I keep saying, really need human contact, and it cannot be replaced by a screen or an AI device.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think it's so helpful for parents to hear that, especially coming from you, Dr. Harding, as an expert in media and toys and play. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope parents run out and buy The Brain That Loves to Play because it is amazing and so helpful. Thank you for listening to Plant the Seed of Learning. We want to thank our guests, past and present, for sharing their knowledge and work. A special thank you to our producer, Penn Ketchum. You can find our podcast wherever you listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We can't wait to learn from you and plant more seeds of learning together.